Done.
Good afternoon, children, and welcome to the Adventures of Tzar the Paddington Poodle Brahmin Bull Encounter. We're up to Chapter 8, and I hope you're enjoying your holiday, so let's get started, shall we? It was well after midnight when Tzar stirred, woken by an uneasy feeling that had crept over him. Sitting bolt upright, he looked around the campsite and noticed that the locals had gone and the drovers, Wally and his folks were fast asleep, tucked in their swags. Stoking the fire with a couple of logs he picked up from the wood pile, he peered out into the vista and was surprised to see that the young herd was stirring restlessly. Ranger was standing back with his nose raised to the air, like he was trying to pick up a scent, so Tzar left the comfort of his bed and trotted over to join the big bull, leaving Ziggy and the others undisturbed. "What's up, Tzar?" asked, noticing the worried look on the big bull's face. "Good question, not sure yet, but something has spooked the herd." The words had barely left his lips when a long howl ripped through the air just metres from where they stood. In the far distance the call was returned. "Wild dingoes," snorted Ranger. "I'm sure it was them that followed us from the river," said Ziggy, quietly joining them. "You were right to be concerned, Zig," replied Tzar. "I bet they're up to no good," said Ranger. "It gets worse. 3 of the young ones are missing," said Shout as he and Bullet joined them. "How did that happen?" they asked. "I reckon they had been watching us for a while and knew exactly when we were at our most vulnerable," replied Bullet. "Probably when we changed ship with Bucky and Chester," whispered Shout. "Listen, Tzar, this is shaping up to be a very dangerous situation. I don't want you and Ziggy to get hurt. I think it best you go back to camp and stay with the others and let me and the horses sort this out," said Ranger. "Thanks, big fella, but this is a job for us poodles." "Are you sure?" "You bet. You can leave the dingoes to Ziggy and me, and that will give you and the horses plenty of time to sort out the herd," said Tzar. "If by chance we need your help, I will let off 3 sharp barks. Woof, woof, woof. So please keep your ears tuned." "Got it," replied Shout. With that, the dingo closest to them let off another spine-chilling howl, and within a second the other one responded, just a few metres away. "Gee, they're close now," said Ranger, looking around to see if he could spot the wild dogs. "Don't you think it's rather odd they are still hanging around? After all, they have already nicked off with 3 of the cattle," retorted Ziggy. "That's a really good question. My guess is that these cunning dogs are trying to throw us off track," replied Ranger. "Look, Zig, I don't think we have time to chit-chat, so let's get going, shall we?" said Tzar, eager to be on his way. "Are you sure you'll be okay?" asked Ranger, his brow furrowing in the middle of his forehead with concern. "Yes, of course. See you later then," they replied, slipping into the darkness. "Zig, here's what I think we should do," said Tzar, laying out his plan to retrieve the missing cattle. "Sounds good to me." The 2 poodles slunk downwind along the side of the plateau so they could quietly sneak up on the dingoes. They knew the dingoes had joined forces as they had stopped calling out to each other. "Smart dingoes," whispered Ziggy, spotting them crawling along on their bellies towards a young bull that had strayed from the others. "Okay, Zig, let's do it," he whispered, shivering in excitement. "Grrrr," they growled loudly. The dingoes spun around and were surprised to have been caught off guard. They instantly peeled back their lips, baring their teeth menacing, and snarled, "Where did you come from?" So let's have a look at the dingoes with Tzar and Ziggy. "Hand them over," said Ziggy, stomping his foot angrily. He eyed the saliva that was dripping from the sides of their mouths and hoped that they had cleaned their teeth recently. "Hand what over?" growled the taller of the 2 dingoes, flicking his ears backwards and forwards, trying to understand what Ziggy was saying. "The cattle you stole," said Tzar, snapping his teeth ferociously. "I don't know what you're talking about," snarled the shorter dingo, shaking his head in disbelief. "And if this is some sort of tactic to distract us while you nick off with our catch, then you better beat it out of here." "Where have you hidden them?" Ziggy asked. "Mate, did you hear my brother?" growled the taller dingo, the hackles on the back of his neck glistening under the moonlight. "Now get lost or else." "Or else what?" snarled Tzar. "Ivan, I'm not listening to this anymore," snapped the smaller dog, spitting saliva in Tsar's face. "You're right, Saxby. I don't know what these two idiots are babbling on about, but I've had enough." "Mate, you're outnumbered 2-1, scoffed Ivan, snapping his teeth together. "You're wrong. There are 2 of us and there are 2 of you," replied Tzar. "You can't be serious." "Your little friend here doesn't count. He's barely bigger than a mouse and I could swallow him whole," sniggered Saxby. But Tzar was unfazed by their aggressive behaviour and just stood there fearlessly glaring at them. "Now for the last time, get lost," snarled Ivan, crashing into Tsar's shoulder. "I don't think so," said a deep voice from behind. The dingo spun around and stared speechlessly at the sight of Shout, Ranger and Bullet crowding them in from behind. "Glad to have reinforcements," said Tzar, rubbing his shoulder with his paw. "I'll have you dingoes know, unlike my nice friends here, I would have no hesitation in crushing the pair of you," said Shout, stomping the ground with his dinner-side plate hoof and tossing his head wildly. "For the last time, Ivan and Saxby, where have you stashed the cattle?" Tzar asked calmly. "As I said before, we don't know what you're talking about. We were just about to snag one when you turned up," replied Saxby, looking sheepishly at his paws. "I'm starving," snarled Ivan, "and that there is dinner, so will you pull yourself together, bro, and let us get on with what we came here to do." "Ivan, back down before you get us run down," screamed Saxby. "Psst," squeaked a creature from within the shadows. Tzar spun around to see a strange mixture of animals lurking in the darkness just metres away. "We have some information about your friend," said the small carnivorous marsupial, waving his hairy jet-black tail in the air like it was a feather duster. "Guys, keep an eye on our dingo friends while Ziggy and I check these fellows out," said Tzar, pointing to the wildlife. "Sure, but let us know if you need help," replied Shout. Tzar and Ziggy ambled over to the strangers and introduced themselves. "Now, you said you had information about our friends," said Tzar. Yes, but first let me introduce the gang," said the feather duster, seemingly not to be in a hurry. "I'm Bruce, the brush-tailed Fuscoli, and this is my very good friend Clem, the spectacled hair wallaby." "Goodness, you're wearing red-rimmed glasses. How bizarre," said Ziggy, leaning in to get a better look. He was just about to tap his toenail on Clem's left eye to check if the glasses were through when she laughed and said, "Don't be ridiculous, of course I'm not. It just looks like I am." "Now, if you don't mind, it's my turn to introduce myself," said a tiny marsupial, barely bigger than a teaspoon, rudely muscling her way in. "I'm Tarian, and this is Stony, the sandstone antechnus," she said, pointing to a creature that looked just like her. "We're not related, you know." "Really? You look the same to me," said Ziggy. "Hey, don't you be confusing me with him. I'm a Carpentarian antechnus, and he is a sandstone antechnus. Big difference," she said, twirling around to show off her beautiful cinnamon-coloured fur. 7 pairs of eyes stared blankly at her, and she glared back at them in disgust. "What, are you blind?" "He has a thin tail, and I have a fatter tail," she said, wriggling her tail from side to side. They decided it was safer to humour the feisty little marsupial, so they all smiled and nodded their heads. "Will you let it go, Tarian?" said a strange-looking creature that looked like a cross between a rabbit and a rat. "You'll have to excuse my friend. She's very, very touchy," he said, shaking his head from side to side. "By the way, he added, looking around at the others, "call me Rat, but actually it's Nala. I'm a brush-tailed rabbit rat, but I'm known as a Pacuma by the locals. You won't see too many of my kind around these days. I think my mob is the last of our breed," he said sadly. "Cheer up, Rat, you have us lot," said a beautiful northern quoll, his white spots glowing brightly under the moonlight. He was hanging upside down on the tree next to them. "Anyway, we're all on the endangered list, Rat, so you're not alone. By the way, I'm Quolly, and this lot," looking around at the strange mixture of creatures, "are my family," he said, releasing himself from the branch and dropping smack bang in the middle of the group. "Now, you said you two were from Paddington. Where on this stony, arid continent is Paddington?" he asked, rolling his big brown eyes and scratching his head with his sharp claw. They looked at Tzar and Ziggy as if they were something from another planet. Well, Paddington is near Sydney and is southeast about 3,100 kilometres by car and 2,478 kilometres as the crow flies from here, replied Tzar, instantly taking a liking to Quolly. Wow, that's a long way from here, said Quolly, shaking his head in disbelief. Look, it really has been an honour meeting you, said Tzar, but we have some very pressing business to attend to, so would you mind telling us what you know, thankful that there were no more critters to meet. So how about we meet the critters and the gang? So here we have Tzar, Ziggy, Quolly, Brush, the brush-tailed Scully. We've got Cled, and we've got Tarian and Stony, and of course Nulla. Yes, of course, said Quolly. Now, if you will follow us, we can show you where your friends are. And before Tzar could respond, he and the others had scampered off. Tzar looked at Ziggy and said, can we trust them? I don't know, but we've got nothing to lose, Ziggy replied, tearing after them. Where are you taking us to? Ziggy asked, falling into step with the beautiful Quoll. Shh, keep your voice down, whispered Quolly. That's where your friends are, whispered Bruce, pointing to a dull glow from a low-burning fire flickering in the distance. But you need to be very, very, very careful, said Nulla. Cocking his head to the side, Tzar asked, why? Because of the two mean cattle rustlers, said Cled. I think we need some reinforcements, whispered Ziggy, and with that, Tzar gave off 3 sharp barks. How did you find them? Tzar asked as they waited for Shout, Bullet and Ranger to arrive. Oh, we were out hunting for dinner by that sand dune, said Nulla, pointing his sharp claw to a large red sand dune not far from them. When we saw 3 bulls wandering around looking lost, said Tarian, wriggling her tail in excitement. We heard the dingoes calling and figured you lot would be distracted by them, said Tony, his whiskers twitching backwards and forwards. So Cled hopped over to the rustlers' camp to see what was going on, said Bruce. And when she got there, she saw them loading the bulls into their truck with an electric prodder. So we put 2 and 2 together, said Quolly, looking at his friends nodding their head in agreement. The rest you know, said Cled. How can we thank you? Asked Tzar, cocking his head to the side. Get your wildlife conservation friends to help us, and we're even, replied Quolly. Done, replied Ziggy, spitting into his paw and thrusting it out for Quolly to shake. Quolly sceptically eyed Ziggy's wet paw and thought to himself that the spitting must be some poodle word-binding ritual. With a shrug of his shoulders, he grabbed it firmly between his paws and pumped it up and down. Hey, I don't know about you lot, but I'm hungry, said Tarian, licking her lips. Me too, replied Nulla. Well, I think our work is done here, said Quolly. Goodbye and good luck with the rescue, they whispered, and in a flash they were gone. Well, that brings us to the end of Chapter 8. I hope you've enjoyed our story. We look forward to speaking with you tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. In the meantime, have a fabulous evening. Bye for now.